Hi, I'm James, and I'm going to give a video review of my Lexus IS300. My friend John's thinking about buying one, so I thought I'd provide a little video review to help him make his decision. So this is my 2002 Lexus IS300, and I've had it for a year and 4 seasons in the Midwest. And I specifically purchased it out of the South. I bought it out of Dallas because I wanted a car that had no rust, and it is just that. You can see it's in a good-looking car for being over 10 years old, and it had nearly 200,000 miles on it when I bought it. Now has just over 200,000, and I've been driving it daily for a year. We are going to take it for a drive in a minute, but before we do, just want to talk about the aesthetics a little bit and also pop the hood. So as far as looks are concerned, I think it's one of the best looking sedans in the class. It's a very good looking car. If you take the time to look at it, you say, gosh, that's a really good looking car. But if it's just another one of the hundreds of other cars on the highway, it doesn't really it doesn't really draw a whole lot of attention, which is a good thing. When you're 35 years old and you don't want to draw a lot of attention, especially from the police, you like to keep it especially when you're 35 years old and you're not interested in getting a whole lot of attention. You just want to drive something that looks nice and is fun to drive. And that's exactly what this car is. So, as you can see, my car is sitting stock. I have the stock wheels on it, stock suspension. Everything appearance-wise is stock. The only thing you might notice is I've replaced the antenna with a stubby antenna because my antenna had dry rotted after 10 years of age. These cars can be dressed up quite nicely. You see quite a few people on the internet dressing them up with slightly wider tires or lowering them a bit, body kits and such. I might get to that at some point, but for now, it's fine, suiting me just fine. We'll pop the hood now, take a look at the famous 2JZ engine, which resides here. And this is one of the selling points for the car for me, is because being that this car is a Toyota, I knew that this car was going to be easier to work on than an Audi, Mercedes, or a BMW. So I wanted a performance luxury sedan, but did not want it to be hard to work on. And my wife has an Audi. It's very, very difficult to work on. This car I found has been very easy to work on, both under hood and under car. The only thing I've had to do under here thus far is a valve cover gasket, and if you're very astute, you might notice that I've replaced the part of the intake here with what's called a Joe Z intake tube, and that just simply removes some of the restriction in the airflow. Doesn't change the note at all. I've really wanted to do a cold air intake on this car, but they say that it robs some horsepower. Actually makes it sound very good, of course, but robs a little power. There are some tricks. I'm planning to do some things to help improve the sound just a little bit without drawing too much attention. Alright, so now we can take it for a drive. Alright, we're gonna go for a test drive now. And this is just this is part of my normal commute home. So we're going to have a few miles here, stop and go, then we'll be jumping on the highway. And then we'll have some back roads that lead up to my house. So get a nice variety on this test drive. So as we get started here, I just want to comment on some of the first impressions I had when I can recall in the week that I just purchased the car. And I can remember one of the first things that occurred to me just within the first day of owning the car is it felt like that the seating position was a little high. In fact, right now, as I'm looking through the windshield, it feels like I'm looking through the top third of the windshield. And I'm 6 foot tall, but that's not really above average. That's pretty typical height. And yet, it feels like I'm looking through the top half of the windshield. Now, this car does have a power seat, which I believe was standard on the cars. so maybe that's limiting how close it can get to the floor, but I've driven other cars, such as my wife's Audi A6, which is no sports car by any means, does have a power seat and can get quite a bit lower. I've got this thing as far down as it'll go. Still feels like I'm a bit high up. Overall, I've got accustomed to it, but would like it to be a bit lower. A couple other things that occurred to me in the first week were, it just felt like there was something funny with the clutch and the accelerator. And turns out there's a dampener in both the clutch and the accelerator. And what's going on there is, in the clutch system, in the hydraulics of the clutch, there is a dampener which Toyota have put in to the Lexus models, the IS300 models, to dampen the shifting, of course, on the manual models. And I guess they felt that being that this is a luxury sports car, that it should have smooth engagement in the shifting. And so they've added a dampener to the system. Now, fortunately, the dampener is easily defeated, and I have done that. In fact, between the time of filming the introduction and this test drive, I have installed a defeater that's sold by Figs Engineering. It's very easy to install. I highly recommend it. After installing it, the clutch just feels normal. Before, it felt a little odd, particularly on slow takeoffs. It would feel like I was slipping the clutch a bit, and now it just feels normal. It feels good. And the engagement of the shifter is very nice. There's really nothing fancy about this 5-speed. I think it's a W58. It's an older transmission, but it feels very good to me. Feels sporty, has nice thunks in between gears, real positive engagement. The shifter may look a little bit high, but it actually is a really nice height, and the shifting is a lot shorter throws than I expected. And then I also mentioned the accelerator. I haven't looked into this much yet, but I hear there's a dampener in the accelerator. I first noticed that it just seemed that there was a little bit of lag between the time you step on the gas and the time that the engine would respond. And I believe that's due to a dampener in the accelerator pedal, which again I believe can be defeated. Haven't looked into that yet, but I think that's a pretty well a do-it-yourself type fix. So we're getting on the highway here. This will be a good chance to test out the acceleration from second gear. We're right up to cruising speed, 80 miles an hour. Acceleration is nice with this engine, the 2JZ. It is smooth and linear. It's not peaky at all. I was expecting with the VVTi engine that there would be a bit of a VTEC type boost near the top of the RPM range, but that isn't there at all. That's not the case. That's okay. I would like a little bit more there. I was hoping somewhere around 5,000 RPM there would be a little bit of a boost, a little kick in the butt. It's not there, but it's okay. Like I say, the power band is very smooth and linear, which is a good thing. We're cruising just under 80, and the ride is good. It is a little on the stiff side, but that's the way I like it. This is a sports sedan, and this is how I think a sports sedan should feel. My wife feels that the ride is a little bit rough, but of course she's accustomed to driving her Audi A6, which is like driving a cloud. So that car is suitable for her, this one suitable for me. You like a little bit stiffer suspension, where the car is communicating to you what it's doing through the steering wheel and through the seat, then you will like the suspension on this car. I drive about 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes each way on my commute, and it's just fine for that. I have taken it on some long trips and found it comfortable there as well. While we're cruising on the highway for a moment, I'll comment on things on the interior. You may notice sometimes when the sun's shining just right that there's a bit of discoloration on the dash, and that is a condition that's referred to in the Lexus community as sticky dash. And apparently Toyota was experimenting with a new type of coating on the dash, something to give it kind of a soft touch feel. You notice it particularly on this part of the panel and a little bit on the top. But what happens is, particularly in warmer climates, such as Dallas, where I bought this car out of, is that the coating will actually start to melt. And if it's real hot, you can actually scratch it very easily. There are some spots on my dash that are scratched. There are techniques you can use to repair it. It requires removing the dash completely, though. I do plan to do it, have bought the materials to do so, but it's a pretty involved repair procedure. This hard left will give us an opportunity to check out the limited slip differential. Just make sure we don't have an audience. And the limited slip is quite aggressive in this car. I was really impressed by just how aggressive the limited slip is. And of course you want to have the traction control off. Every time you start the car, you need to hit the fun button to turn that traction control off. If you tend to forget, you can buy a little device called a state rememberer on the internet for about $50, and it will remember the last state that the traction control was in, and you can turn it off. The reason you want to turn it off is because since that limited slip is so aggressive that even just on situations where you wouldn't think traction control should be kicking in, it'll suddenly kick in because all it has to do is detect just a little bit of slip. So with that limited slip being so aggressive, it's very easy to get slip, and in that case it's going to pull your power back. It actually spooked me in the first few moments of owning the car. I took it for a test drive, and when I got into it, I ran it hard through first and grabbed second gear, and then right as I grabbed second, the traction control kicked in and ruined my fun. And it spooked me because I didn't know what was going on, why all of a sudden the accelerator just got pulled away. And that's what was going on. The traction control kicked in. It's pretty rare for me to have this road to myself, especially at this time of day. It's rush hour time, and usually I'm behind some slowpoke, so it's nice that I have this road to myself. Some other considerations on the interior is just the layout of the dash. I really like it. It's really user-friendly. The HVAC layout is very nice. I like the simple 3-dial setup. Usually in luxury cars you get some overly complicated HVAC system with buttons everywhere. With this, you don't have to take your eyes off the road. You can just reach down and make an adjustment. You know, it's similar to what you'd find in an economy car, I think, but it's my favorite style of controls for HVAC. Only minor complaint is that being an automatic thermostat, it will kick on the air conditioning for you. So if you just switch it on to low, it'll turn on the air conditioner if it needs it. I'd prefer to have the full control over that. That's just a minor gripe. The sound system is, I'm using the factory sound system. I tend to prefer just the look of the OE sound systems, and it's good enough for me. I believe it's a 6-speaker system. You got a couple speakers on the A-pillar for tweeters, and there's a subwoofer somewhere, and it's good enough for me. It's got a little bit of a kick with the subwoofer. Could be better, but as far as stock sound systems go, it's very good. You'll notice I also have the GPS voice navigation system, which was a little bit of a selling point for me when I bought the car, but it's completely useless. only because the maps are completely out of date. The maps are from 2002. If you want to update the maps, it's going to cost you a couple $100 to do that. This is a fun turn. Hopefully we don't have anybody else coming the other way. And I give it up on this turn big time because there is a huge drop off on that side. So the handling in this car is as you would expect factory suspension to behave. It understeers at the limit as you just saw. But being a rear-wheel drive car, you can get the rear end out if you like, and I have found that the car behaves very well when it's a little bit sideways, and you can get it straighten it back out very easy. So as far as the handling goes, it's a lot of fun and no major complaints. I would say that an M3 or a 3 Series BMW probably turns in a bit harder than this car, but for my use, no complaints. I think it's fantastic. Other important consideration is braking, and of course the car has an ABS, and no complaints on the ABS. It behaves very nicely. I haven't tracked the car, but I've gotten into a few, a few emergency braking type situations on loose surfaces, and it behaves just fine. It doesn't get too squirrely. It doesn't engage the ABS prematurely. It's just right. So I'm happy with the ABS system on the car. The gauge cluster is another interesting thing on the car. It kind of resembles a chronograph. Pretty unique looking interface. Personally, I would prefer the cluster that comes out of the Japanese car, which has the tachometer in the middle as opposed to on the side. But on the IS model, we get the speedometer in the middle instead of on the side. So it's fine. I prefer the Japanese cluster, but I think it's a $600 part if you wanted to buy it off of eBay. So for $600, I'll just make do with this. Also, it has a near worthless MPG gauge, miles per gallon, which just bounces all over the place. Right now it says I'm doing 80 miles per gallon because I'm coasting down this hill. So this is a comment on miles per gallon though. I get about 22 miles per gallon normally. I do run the high octane in it, like 91, 93 octane. And on trips, I've gotten 24 miles per gallon with it on exclusively highway. I'm giving this guy a little room here so I can take this last turn with a little more speed. Last few turns here. This is a fun turn and a good ABS test. There's a bit of a bump and a little gravel right there, and I come into that hot occasionally and never have any trouble with the ABS engaging. Right after that dip is right when you need to start braking, and there's always a little loose gravel because there's a driveway there, and I never have any trouble with the ABS being weird. So overall, really happy with the way the car drives and the layout of the interior. The position of the cruise control and the little stalk down here, I like that. The lights where they should be. Everything is I think where it should be in the car, easy to access. So I'll give you my closing thoughts in a few moments after I get home. While we were on the test drive, I think I forgot to mention the tires. The tires on the car presently are the Continental Extreme Contact DWS, and I'm quite a fan of these tires. I've had them on a couple other personal vehicles. The tires on the car now are at about 30% tread life. They're actually down to the D of the DWS, which means they're really only suited for use in the dry. And what I find is with these tires, or with any tire, when you get down pretty low in the tread, they also start to talk quite a bit more. So you may have noticed on the test drive the tires talking in the turns, and that's in my opinion, due to kind of getting down to those last layers of tread. They're not quite as grippy as those initial layers. So the tires are still holding up just fine. The tire wear all around the car has been very good. Of course, I keep a good alignment on the car, and I probably burn the tires off in the rear faster than I wear them off in the corners. So keeping them rotated keeps them worn well. So to sum up my review, really the best compliment that I can give to the car is that if something were to happen to this car today, I would buy the same car all over again. If you're looking for a car under $10,000, a four-door sedan, rear-wheel drive with a manual transmission, you're not going to find a whole lot in that genre. You're going to see BMW 3 Series, 5 Series, and the Lexus IS300. There's not a whole lot else beyond that that's worth considering. The IS300 is my first choice in the group, and after owning it for a year, I would still make the same decision. And for me, one of the biggest considerations is how easy the car is to work on. It certainly is no Toyota Camry, but it's just about as easy to work on as a Toyota Camry. Easy to diagnose yourself, easy to work on, and that's something that's really important to me. And the car has a good aftermarket, and so if you want to tune it, you want to race it, there's options for you there, and it's fun to drive daily. So I'm really happy with it. So I expect to hold on to this car for quite some time.